and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. Everyone, sorry about that little glitch and little hiccup there at the beginning, but we are live. We're ready to go. Everyone, hey, how you doing? Hopefully you're doing well and you are ready for some Computer America. So let's see. First things first. Everyone, I hope that you're having a great day and you are, of course, ready for a program. We have, normally in the middle of the week, but he was so gracious to let us reschedule him for the end of the week. So we're wrapping up this week with none other than Derakhshani. He is our resident computer graphics expert. That's what he does. And yeah, we're going to talk all about CGI. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics, including ray tracing and what it means for the next generation of consoles. I'm also going to bring up cats because, hey, that landed and the internet has not shut up about it since. So we're going to talk about the uncanny valley and what really cats might have done wrong with the whole thing. But hey, and a lot of hardware and other kinds of things. So everyone, this is going to be very informative, always a lot of fun, and hey, hopefully you're ready for it. So first things first though, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including the show notes. It will have any topics that we bring up, any articles that we show, any videos that we show on the live video portion. You can see them all right there, super easy. And on top of that, you can also find articles, reviews, past shows, future shows. We just put up like 14 shows. I know that we unfortunately, we were a little bit behind a little bit behind. So, and by a little bit, I mean about 3 weeks. But we just got caught up yesterday, and yeah, you can check that all out. YouTube. I can't say iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcasts because they're trying to ditch iTunes. So I got to strike that one from my head. But everyone, one last time, welcome into the program, and why don't we go ahead and bring our guest on and just, hey, have fun with it. So, as I said before, Derakhshani, he's worked on many projects, and we are happy that he can join us every single month to talk about the latest in CGI and graphics and things like that, and hardware. It's always changing, always developing, and we're happy that he could join us. So, Dariush, how you doing? Welcome back onto the program.
Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a bit of a frantic Friday, but ready for the weekend. Dariush, you have no idea what kind of pressure 5 hours a week puts on a person. It's just insane what we do here on Computer America. But
it is.
Yeah. So we're doing well. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
All right, perfect. So, with that being said, for everyone out there watching the video portion, you can see myself. We're going to throw Dariush's face up there as well. And, hey, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, a lot to talk about here. You sent over a couple of topics. I have some of my own. And I think we're going to start with this one because it was the first one on your list. And hey, I think that I know this is what you kind of do as a day job with as you teach classes at a college and at a university. And on top of that, you work with this on the daily. Did you want to talk about Adobe Dimension CC? Because we've had Adobe on talking about their entire suite of products, and Photoshop gets a lot of love. If you're a web developer, Dreamweaver gets a lot of love. If you maybe Adobe After Effects and things like that, there's a massive toolkit. But I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of using Dimension. So, what is it about this article that made you want to throw it in here?
Well, this is actually something, I forget what it was called when it was in beta that we talked about many months ago on a previous show. It's basically another step into 3D, or kind of democratizing, popularizing 3D and the use of 3D, where how clip art a long time ago made it much easier to make digital graphics and print your newsletters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. With desktop publishing. 3D is starting to get that way, and Adobe is really pushing into that space. And Dimension is kind of an evolution based on some of the things that they had been doing a little bit before. So this essentially allows you to have 3D clip art. So if you're trying to put together a nice complicated looking image, you can use 3D space to give you more impact with what you're doing. So you can, instead of finding a picture of a guitar that's at just that one angle, you can actually bring in a 3D guitar, move it around, and sort of light it to fit your background, and then that would be, part of your image, and it sort of gives you the power of making it look like you took that photo, or that you designed it the way it was.
So obviously the first thing is that when it came to 3D modeling, 3D, manipulating these kinds of photos, it was very much, some technical, but it was very much an artist's eye. It took an artist to, do the lighting. It took artists to do the shading, artists to make sure that, yes, it's a 3D object that's not really there, but it still had to look real enough that the eye could go, oh, hey, that's a real guitar. With clip art, you don't really get that. It's cookie cutter. It's meant to fit 100 different patterns. Do you think this is even possible to kind of cookie cut something that used to be, like I said, kind of take an artist?
I think you're still going to have a need for artists. Obviously, you're still going to have a need for designers and things like that. But the entry level to being able to do a digital image using 3D assets is getting a little bit less and less, because right now you still kind of need to spend a fair amount of time learning a 3D package, whether it's Blender or Maya, for example. You got to put some effort into it. What Dimension is doing is allowing you to use 3D objects in a much more simple way. It still takes a creative eye, it still takes an artistic eye to get the image to look really, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
But that tool set is now easier, and this is something that I wrote about a long time ago in some industry publications many years ago, that basically was asking for 3D for CG to become a little bit easier. Because that's really the thing. It's not so much cost, because you can download Maya for free. Same thing with Blender.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much cost of your hardware, where when I started, you needed $200,000-$300,000 worth of hardware to run these programs. So now it's really about comfort and being able to do it, quickly and easily. And 3D packages, even something as open source and open as Blender, still takes time to kind of get to know. And I think Dimension is taking a really good swipe at setting people up with, simple CG things. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to be animating, a Shrek or some Pixar movie out of this,
Right.
but you'll be able to place some objects and make them look like they belong within your composition. So I think this is a very important first step, and I just wish we could have gotten here. We could have gotten here, 5 years ago easily. But
Well,
I'm glad that Adobe is doing this now, and in the way that they're doing it.
so, and you say that we could have gotten to this point. Did Adobe have to do this? Because you mentioned Maya, which we've talked about on the show before, and a lot of other Blender, like you said. Did Adobe's well known for being kind of an industry standard because of they're just so dominant. Did Adobe have to get to this point before we could say we've gotten to this point?
Well, I think Autodesk, which owns Maya, either Autodesk or the company that previously owned Maya before Autodesk,
Mm-hmm.
they tried to make an LT version of Maya, a lighter version of Maya that perhaps had a smaller subset of the features, but made it a little bit easier. But it was still a little too complicated and cumbersome to get into and use. As far as it being Adobe versus anybody else, I'm kind of glad it's Adobe, because they really understand this space.
Mm-hmm.
And if it were some other people, Apple, I think it may have ended up being too much gimmicky and too, I don't know, unusable. The reason I say that, I'm not just being a hater. I think Apple has amazingly built computers, but they have a tendency of taking professional level software and just sort of trashing them. Um,
Yeah, I have heard that Apple likes to I guess over-engineer is a word where they really get in there and they say, yeah, that's good, but is it is it is it fine-tuned enough? Is it sleek enough? Is it predictive enough? And they'll go through and try to, I guess, try to help you use the software without kind of giving you all the options. They'll weed it out for you, and
Yeah,
it can be
yeah. I mean,
over-engineered.
they killed off a couple of really great pieces of software, Final Cut Pro being one of them,
Mm-hmm.
and gave. I just think they don't understand the wider professional graphics space. You look at their new computers coming out, it's $6,000 base price for one of their computers. It's an
Yeah.
amazing computer. I mean, don't get me wrong, and the things you can do with it are pretty great, but they are aimed at a very small segment of the professional graphics market where the much broader base of graphics users won't have the money for that kind of thing and will be better served buying a $2,000 PC rather than a $6,000
Well,
base
yeah.
Mac.
The base Mac, and of course, anyone can go to Apple and check that one out. I don't think we're gonna have a final price on when it's fully upgraded because the base is very much basic. It's there's a lot of headroom that Apple gives you in there to upgrade, including, as I recall, 1.5 terabytes of RAM that you can actually get installed with a computer, which is that's more RAM than I've ever heard on a single system, at least available to consumers. But like you said, I'm betting it's going to be about $35,000, including the
Oh,
monitor,
nice. Yeah.
including the monitor stand for another thousand
Yeah.
dollars. It's going to be about
$1,000 stand.
$35,000. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Apple just cannot get out of its way, and they have been misreading the professional graphics market for a very long time. And I think, one of the big nails in that coffin was Final Cut Pro.
mm,
They ceded so much of the market to Adobe, and I like Adobe. I think Adobe's done some daft things, that makes you scratch your head, of course, but this is their market.
yeah.
Adobe gets it. That this is their bread and butter and they understand it. Apple, they make phones, so I think the group that is running the Apple Pro market, they're just not in it, and they're going to end up weeding themselves out. And they've been doing a lot of hand rigging and talking to professionals, and they have a professional user group, or at least a group that's dedicated to communicating with professional users in graphics. But for all the fretting and hand wringing, they're
Apple,
they're they
yeah.
just they missed that boat. The boat has sunk.
Apple is this weird company where they're so successful, and they are successful. Despite what we're saying about them, they are making money. Which I guess as a company, that's what you do. As you know, and we can pick on them for their hardware and their decisions and things like that. I will say that if I wanted to pick up a phone and ask Computer America, I can call up my contacts at Dell. I can call them at IBM. I can call them at whatever hardware software manufacturer at Adobe, and I can get through to someone. Apple, on the other hand, they're so closed off, and I know we're just media and they don't like talking to the media, but they won't even like kind of vet their ideas in a professional setting, even such as this, that any other company will gladly do. But Apple is very, very walled garden. I know that we say that about their phones and their software and their operating system, but they're like that in real life too, I guess, with their business practices.
Yeah, I think it just kind of goes to show a little bit of their waning interest in that area. And
Mm-hmm.
same could be said of a lot of places. Autodesk, for example, that I've mentioned before, they own a lot of 3D and CG packages. So the innovation isn't the way it used to be when there was a lot of competition.
Mm.
And we've talked about this in terms of NVIDIA and AMD
Right?
and Intel as well. And when Ryzen from AMD came out, it really lit a fire under Intel's butt. And I think the same is happening with the AMD chips and the excellent NVIDIA lineup. There's a will to innovate and to really compete because that's what you have to do. I don't think that's really there their market anymore as far as Apple and
Right.
graphics. A very good friend of mine, we went to grad school together like 20 some years ago, and he's a graphics professional, owns his own design firm, diehard Mac user. They would make
Mm-hmm.
fun of me so many years ago for being the Windows guy, and he just bought an Alienware.
Ooh.
He's like, I can't afford to do this anymore. I have to get a good computer that I can afford and actually use, and Apple's just not doing anything for me. And he had a trash can Mac and he loved it. And after a year, I made fun of him for it. But after a year, he's like, yeah, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I can't upgrade this. I can't do anything. Because after a few years of having it, it was just slow. And whereas every 2 years, I just rip apart my box, throw in a new motherboard. I've got my trusty Quadro NVIDIA graphics card. I always use that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm upgraded. I've got a whole new system. I'm back on closer to the cutting edge. He couldn't do that. So now he can. Now he's going to be able to.
Yeah, no, and Alienware, I do find it funny that your friend found Alienware to be the cheaper option, because Alienware was well known for, of course, at least in the gaming space, for being the higher end and probably the more expensive. But I mean, I guess compared to Apple, they're
Yeah.
quality to budget.
Yeah.
So
And he needed a pretty beefed up system. I think
right,
he's got a
yeah.
1080i card in it. So
Yeah, so
yeah, I
so
mean,
so he needed
well,
something put together, and Alienware, and of course Dell by extension will certainly do that for you. And since no one pays
absolutely.
us, I'm not even going to recommend places like Origin or what have you. But I will say that hardware aside, let's get back on track with Adobe Dimension real quick. And for those of you watching on the video portion, we've been checking out this little article, and really it just seems that easy that you take clip art, you select what you want it to be made out of. Like, let's say in this case on the website, a bag. You can make the bag look like brown paper, white paper. Make the bag look out of wood or something like that. Put it in a setting that's preset, or something that that you yourself shot, and really slap a logo on it and call it a day. I mean, where do you see this really kind of taking hold most? Is this for like people who kind of work in volume advertising, and they have to make like ads and things like that? I mean, where's this really going to save time for people?
Well, I think people who work in design studios will benefit from this, although they probably already have artists that are CG capable already, that have already several years of experience.
Mm-hmm.
This will make some tasks easier. It will be a lot a lot better to go into a Blender or a 3D Studio Max or a Maya to get great results out of CG, especially when you're creating stuff. So that's not going to go away. But some of the simpler, faster tasks are going to be emboldened by Dimension for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is going to open it up to people who are curious about CG, but don't necessarily have the time or the energy required right now to get into the depths of learning something in CG,
So,
because it could take
yeah.
just dozens of hours just to get your feet wet in
So
something
you think
like
that
Maya.
someone could potentially use dimensions and be like, this looks good enough, but if I really wanted
Yeah,
to make it look better, I have to use Maya or something.
I I think so. You're gonna have you're gonna have some pretty really great results out of Dimension, that's for sure. But it's understandably gonna have a lower ceiling
Yeah.
than a full CG package would.
I gotcha. And of course, this probably, I think I read here, available through the Creative Cloud, which is just the subscription model for Adobe. Which actually I think is a pretty good idea, better than spending a couple $100s on Photoshop or something like that.
Right.
And then hey, 3 years later they come out with a new one, and you're out all that money. It's not a bad way to go about it. So with that being said, though, one thing I'm kind of curious about is, and I know this has happened for 3D printing, where people will go through and make their own 3D printing
Hmm.
schematics or designs or whatever, or renders, whatever you call the actual kind of blueprint for a 3D printer. And it's actually funny that pirating sites, peer-to-peer sites, that was actually a pretty good legal use case for them. Was that you could upload those and share those and download those however you want, but a large industry has popped up around the idea of buying these blueprints. People are trying to get to sell, a 3D printed sign that says "Welcome Home" or something, whatever. Here they mentioned they have stock assets as well, and you can download them from the it's from the stockadobe.com, whatever. Do you think that they're going to sell assets to people?
Oh, for sure.
You think?
For sure. I mean, there's already a pretty good market out there for CG assets that could be used in existing programs. I imagine that they could also be used in Dimension, because 3D models have a interchange format where different applications can use the same model.
Mm-hmm.
So a model isn't necessarily tied down to Maya, for example. So there's a pretty vibrant community. If you go to
I didn't know that.
website called turbosquid.com,
okay,
you're going to find almost anything. And it's kind of like a peer-to-peer sort of thing. A lot of people create their own stuff and put it up there, and they'll sell it for a couple of bucks or $50 or whatever it might be. So it's a pretty good community that's already out there, and I would imagine this is just going to help it grow.
Yeah, I'm checking that out now. They have everything from people, monsters, animals, vehicles, architecture, furniture. Yeah, I didn't even know this. So I was trying to describe a roundabout market with 3D printers. This market already exists. Like, people are already doing this for either their personal enjoyment or for money. They'll create assets that anyone can use. So I did not know that.
Yeah, and there's a big overlap between them as well, because a model that you can use in Maya or possibly even Dimension, you could get it to print as well.
Very, very true. Because obviously 3D is 3D, and that's what you need for a 3D printer. So perfect. And so that is and by the way, Dimension, this article came out about 2 weeks ago, but is this fully in the Creative Cloud and you can go download it whenever and give it a try?
It should be available. Yeah, you should be able to get your hands on it. There have been some beta iterations of it before, but I think this is the official part of CC now.
Right. Okay, and there you go. So Dimension, another one to kind of add to people's toolboxes. Very, very cool. Let's go ahead and continue on. We have some time to kind of get into our next topic here, and this is actually so. All right, I'm going to do this just to liven things up. I mentioned this way at the beginning of the show, and hopefully you can explain what happened here. I'm going to go ahead real quick and let's see, share my screen with you, which I think will be this one. Here we go. And of course, you can see it here. You can see an image and the internet in general, as this article from Engadget mentions. Cats, yes, Cats as in, the Broadway musical, which has been on Broadway for 30 years now or something like that. It's been a long time. Cats is now getting a full feature film. And the trailer, if you haven't seen it, involves a lot of big names. This is not going to be cheap. This is a huge production. And, Idris Elba, Judi Dench, Taylor Swift, and a lot more. Jason Derulo as well, out of nowhere. And let's see, if I play this and if this part of the video kind of gets taken down, I'll work on getting that not taken down. But, okay. Dariush, we've talked on the show about the uncanny valley. The internet really, I don't want to say took offense, but they were all freaked out by the CG in Cats. So you can probably see a little bit of it here on the video portion. But first impression, what do you think? Because this is not people in skin tight spandex as it is on Broadway. This is, everyone is at least to some extent CG touched up.
Yeah, for sure. It's I don't like it. I'm not a fan. I'm not
a lot of people are,
a
lot of people are with you.
But I don't. Not a fan.
Not a fan, and of course, a lot of people are with you as well. They've turned everyone into cats, and I guess they're still very human, but they're very cat. I don't know.
Yeah, I know it's weird. I think it's something that we sort of maybe need to get used to. I mean, with like the Lion King being live action now, and Jungle Book being live action, and Aladdin being live action. Um, I don't know. It's weird. I think it's just another way to cash in on what's an already existing intellectual property. Which, sure, bully for you. Go for it, do it. But it's just yeah, it doesn't float my boat in any way. Doing this.
So yeah, and let's see. So we'll pause it there because you can kind of see the faces there. I
Mm.
mean, this is on the tail of, well, the Lion King, which you mentioned was not so much live action as it was just kind of
It's all photoreal, I should say, not
photorealistic.
live action.
Yeah, photorealistic. They didn't have they didn't have a monkey holding a lion, but it's looks very very good and it's photorealistic. But on top of that, I'm sure that you saw Sonic the Hedgehog or Sonic the Hedgehog. There we go. The initial reaction to that by the internet, and the internet can be very fickle, but I think they were completely right on that one. The movie studio actually said, you know what, the initial trailer was so bad because Sonic the Hedgehog looks so awful. We're gonna go back and change the film after the fact. Have you ever heard of anything like that? That the initial reaction to a movie was so bad that they're like, all right, we're gonna go back and rework an already released trailer.
I think yeah, definitely. Maybe not in such a sort of graphic way as this, no pun intended.
Mm-hmm.
I think I think a lot of places will go back and re-edit a film or change a few things or reshoot some things. Wasn't Alita Battle Angel delayed over and over again even after its original trailers came out? Um, so yeah, as far as the Uncanny Valley and cats go,
Mm-hmm.
the cats are so much. Uh, they're not trying to look human, so I don't know if the Uncanny Valley will really apply too much to that
Well,
because that's generally when things try to look
yeah.
too human. This just looks. It just
They
looks bad.
yeah,
It just yeah. It just I don't know. I just don't know.
the
I don't know about people in cat makeup to begin with, but this just takes the cake.
yeah, and of course the cats, they they have human noses, they have human eyes, but then cat ears, cat head, and of course
You're right.
entire
Right.
cat bodies. Um,
Now,
mm,
I have to say, all due respect to all the people who make this happen, it is incredibly hard work to get something to look good. Lion King or Cats or whatever
mm-hmm.
takes hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of hours to get something to look nice. So, as technologically and artistically accomplished as it is, I just aesthetically, narratively,
Yeah.
maybe don't go along with it, but I do have to tip my hat to all the people
So
who make
yeah,
this work out. So kudos to them.
that's the reaction I wanted from you was you may not like it, and of course a lot of people out there on the internet have voiced the exact same thing, but you have to, at least from a professional standpoint, say yeah, that took a lot of
Absolutely.
work.
Yeah.
That's very advanced. So obviously, hey, and for those of you who didn't know, Cats is coming out. Who knew?
Yeah.
So
No.
I I know I didn't even see that coming, and of course even the Broadway kind of freaked me out a little bit, but
Right. Right.
hey,
But like I said, I mean, you don't have to like something that you can respect and really admire. And I admire how The Lion King looked. And I'm, looking at this, and I admire the amount of work that goes into this. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah, well, hey, I think everyone wanted a film about feline aids to come out around this time, so the wish of the people has been granted. Now, I will say, Dariush, we're about to head into break here in about in none too short order, about 20 seconds. When we come back, Dariush, we're going to talk about ray tracing. We're going to talk about AMD, their hybrid ray tracing, and their new Radeon Pro WX 3200, I believe, and more. So everyone, stay tuned. Hardware, Derakhshani. We're doing everything CGI, graphics, and things like that. Everyone, we'll be right back.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And everyone, hey, thank you so much for continuing on with us. If you missed any part of today's program or any other program, check out wherever podcasts are heard, including Apple Podcasts and more. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. And we're having a fun conversation with Dariush as we talk all about, we were talking about cats. If you want to know how we got there, well, you can go check that out. But we're going to move on from cats, as I think a lot of people wish that they could. Dariush, thank you for continuing on with us. I think we're going to go ahead and transition into some hardware. And what better piece of hardware than a new graphics card? So obviously, we talked about Radeon, we talked about all that kind of stuff. AMD has really been, like you said, competitive for the past year or two. Ever since Ryzen really came out, they've been giving Intel, and in this case NVIDIA, because it's a graphics card, they've been giving NVIDIA a run for their mid-range money, I guess.
Absolutely. AMD has been consistently a great performer in the price to performance ratios. Their cards, they don't hit the higher end of what NVIDIA can output, or at least historically not quite there, but their cost to performance ratio is extremely tantalizing. And their Radeon Pro, I've been testing Radeons alongside Quadros for many years now, and I've been pretty impressed. Although I have to say, the last couple of year and a half, 2 years, I haven't really had too much of an opportunity to see how the Radeon Pros do compared to them. So if anybody from AMD is listening, call me.
There you go.
Right, but the basically AMD's place in graphics is pretty secure in knowing that you're not going to spend a ton, and you're going to get pretty good hardware. So the WX3200 that we're looking at here, this is an entry-level card. There's been, the debate: should I just get a gaming card, or should I get a professional card like a Radeon Pro or a Quadro? That debate's been around ever since these cards have been around. It's a tough question to really answer, because for $200 you can get a pretty good gaming card that will be probably a little bit faster than the Radeon Pro.
Mm-hmm.
The distinction between the gaming and the Pro cards is the driver certification, the memory and the silicone, the hardware essentially that's being used, has gone through a much stricter, much higher bar of certification, testing, and manufacturing. So that it's more about stability than it is about raw speed for professional cards.
Well, and really, as a professional, I've heard some cases of people, and really, when you think about, I don't know, the old story of Bitcoin mining and cryptocurrency mining, that was all the rage a year or two ago. Which, by the way, what is the price of Bitcoin? Whenever I think about Bitcoin, I think of the price of Bitcoin. I think it's doing, it's had a weird couple of months where it kind of regained like 3 times its value. But regardless, people were running these things essentially at 100%, whatever they were limited at by the thermal threshold. They were running these graphics cards to mine cryptocurrency at 100%. 24/7, which is something that, as let's say you play video games, you'll switch from one scene to another, and it'll go up and down in terms of total usage. It fluctuates, and I'm not sure what's better for a graphics card, if it's kind of like highway miles versus city miles for a car. But for a graphics professional, I'm guessing it's kind of like Bitcoin mining or cryptocurrency mining, where if you're working on a project and you're trying to output something for at least a couple of days, depending on your hardware, or a couple of hours, it's going to be 100% and just floor it. So that's why you really want something tested. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Totally agree with that assessment. It pays to have stability when you're a professional, much more than just raw speed. It really is. Because if you get a driver error or you get a display glitch in the middle of your work and something crashes, you may end up losing, minutes, if not hours of work. And that just, you can't have that when you're under deadline.
Yeah, and I guess for a couple of extra bucks, another $50 or a couple $100 to make sure that doesn't happen would be well worth the money spent for a lot of people out there. Real quick, 10-bit color. This is something that we've touched on a couple of times in the past, but how important is 10-bit color when it comes to a graphics processor? Because I know that a lot of consumers are still running with 8-bit, and I guess 10-bit's just the 10-bit color gamut really isn't a priority for the consumer space.
No, it certainly isn't. But for the professional, even the prosumer space, it's critical for professional, and it's recommended for prosumer space because you need to judge your colors accurately. So you need a video card that will support 10-bit. You need your operating system to support 10-bit. You need your monitor to support 10-bit, and all of those things together. As far as monitors go, there's 2 flavors of 10-bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's true 10-bit, and then there's dithering 10-bit, which is basically 8 plus 2, where the extra color depth is sort of faked, dithered in a way. And it's better than a regular 8-bit for sure, but it's not as color accurate as an actual 10-bit would be.
Yep. And I'm trying to find an article here. This one from Tom's Hardware, which is actually where we're looking at the Radeon, and I guess they show kind of an image here of what that dithering looks like, in kind of a gradient, where they show dithered and not dithered. So yeah, it obviously you can tell there's definitely a difference between something with a bit of a higher. Oh, what's the word? I don't even know. But you can tell
it's called bit depth.
Fidelity.
Higher bit depth, yeah.
Bit depth. I was going to go with fidelity, but bit depth is probably the right word. But yeah, no, you could definitely see a difference there, and I could see kind of the technology you're talking about. So, but with that being said, going back to the graphics card, of course, with the Radeon Pro. They have a hardware chart here where they compare it to the Quadro P1000 and the Quadro P620. I have not. Oh, well, I actually take it back. They have the price right here. When it comes to price, I mean, it's comparable, I guess, because they have 174 to 204, depending on where you shop. Blah blah blah. it's markedly better than the same NVIDIA in the same price range, but it's, like we said about most of the cards, it's not the best in the entire space.
No, and there are Radeon Pros that are faster and better than the 3200 for sure. But I think the takeaway from this is the fact that the 3200 entry level is definitely better than the 620 from NVIDIA, which is super entry level in NVIDIA. I mean, I pretty much look at the 1000s and to some extent the Quadro 2000s as entry to mid level at best. So when I look at the 3200, its performance is about on par with the P1000, give or take. It's a little bit slower, but its memory bandwidth is a little bit better.
Yeah.
But it's at a 50% price premium. It's 200 versus 300 and change. So I think that's where NVIDIA really enjoys its crown, is the fact that it can get about as good as the next card up from it, but it's cheaper than the next card down from it, if that makes any sense.
So, and I'm kind of curious here. So in the article, they mentioned that it can power 4K monitors. And whenever I hear a statistic like that, you might know better than I do. For the program here in our studio, I'm running 3 monitors. I would ideally like 4, just because I always need another one. But
Yes.
4 4K monitors sounds great, except for the main, which I probably go with 1440p instead of 4K. But when they say that it can handle up to 4, I know that it has 4 connections. Do you know how much that would? And I know that you said you hadn't tested the Radeon Pro WX, but just in your experience, if you hook up 4, let's say 4K monitors, does that tax something on an entry level a lot? Like, does it kind of take away from a lot of the performance?
I don't know how much it would, but I'm sure it does.
To some extent. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, to some extent. I don't know if it's going to be super laggy if you have 4 screens moving around, but it certainly will tax more of the CPU. So when you do go and peg it, and you've got 4 screens running, you're going to run at a slightly diminished return than if you only had 1 screen. Same goes with if you're running 4K versus HD. You're going to have a faster performance at HD.
Yep, and like they said here, you can also run a single 8K monitor, which we're going to talk about 8K in just a minute with the new generation of consoles. But yeah, so we'll get to that. But I do want to stick with AMD to AMD. So that's the Radeon Pro WX 3200. Like you said, kind of a new entry point for Radeon Pro if you want to get into the budget-oriented compact workstation, as this article kind of points out. Now, this next article you sent over, Tom's Hardware yet again, and Nathaniel Mott talking about a file that was patented for hybrid ray tracing solution. And before we get into this, we could of course just talk in general about ray tracing, but not so much what it is, because we've said that so many times, although we're probably going to say it again, but more specifically AMD's relationship to ray tracing, because I think NVIDIA with its RTX cards are really trying to capitalize on it, and even I'm a little fuzzy on how AMD is answering NVIDIA trying to completely own the ray tracing brand.
Well, I think it's absolutely up to AMD to get into ray tracing and stay in ray tracing. Ray tracing, we've talked about, is the most important thing to help 3D images look better, especially if you get into real time. So the RTX is a great lineup of cards from NVIDIA, of course. If AMD doesn't get into that space successfully, it's going to lose a lot of ground, because honestly, ray tracing is the next best thing for getting your graphics to look better, without a doubt. Rendering, when I've been in computer graphics, for quite a while now, and everything pretty much I've done in the last 25 years has been ray traced. Of course, it's not real time, but it's been around quite a while, and it's very important. Ray tracing, GI, you've heard of before, I'm sure. That's much better when it's ray traced. Obviously, actually, it is ray traced.
Yeah, and I guess the big part, because you said it's been around for so long, and the big innovation here that we keep talking about it is the fact that it can be done, well, again, in real time ray tracing, and the fact that essentially every game that you play, and really we're talking about this in a kind of gaming kind of aspect, every game you play will look like a cutscene or cinematic that had been planned and kind of touched up, but it's again real time. So
that's the idea.
Yeah.
So I think what AMD is doing may be smart by hybridizing it, where some of it's offloaded to software, where the rest is on the GPU.
Yeah, and of course, so we have this this article here, the patent that they're filing. So what is the difference between hybrid, and you mentioned the software, which enables, and then they're using hardware to kind of work with it. I mean, that's all well and good. It's just, I don't know, I guess kind of the thing about NVIDIA is that I guess game developer studios have to kind of know beforehand, we're going to make this work with ray tracing or with NVIDIA's standard for ray tracing.
Right.
And then it will run on the compatible hardware. Is AMD going to say that, okay, to make it run, you have to do XYZ as well? Are people going to have to, are game development studios going to have to pick and choose their resources to make it either AMD or NVIDIA ray tracing compatible?
I think right now probably it really depends on the code and what they put out, because consoles have AMD in them right now, the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4. So getting an RTX chip in there would sort of behold them to programming it that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know nearly enough about programming to know, to be able to say if it's going to be universal enough to be able to be platform agnostic, so that if you have a console or something that's based on an NVIDIA chipset, that the game has to be recompiled, or that you have to buy that flavor of game for that console or not. I think it's too early to come out with anything universal.
Yeah, we kind of do it already when you have to choose either an Xbox or a PlayStation, version of the game. They're not interchangeable. Maybe it'll be the same way. You have to, kind of pick. But it probably won't be like that for long, if it is like that at all, because eventually we'll settle on a standard that everyone will kind of agree on. And they also mentioned here at the end of this article from AMD that this latest Navi-based graphics card, which was on the 8nm die, none of the hardware was devoted to ray tracing. So AMD is taking the position of it's just not a priority. And you think that,
it needs to be.
You think that it needs to be?
Absolutely needs to be a priority with them. It really does. They may say that it's not, and maybe really honestly it's not, but I would be amazed if they are not already freaking out about doing something about ray tracing.
Yep.
It is incomprehensible to me for anybody in graphics to think that something other than ray tracing is the next thing to go after.
Well, and we're going to talk about the some hardware now, but we're going to talk about oh, and by the way, for anyone out there watching the video portion, we just showed a video that Dariush had linked of, that showed a lot of great examples of real-time rendering, RTX on and off and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's certainly not going to be 8K, even though that's coming as well. So let's go ahead and talk about a bit more hardware as we kind of switch over real quick to this $80 HDMI dongle. I think this is kind of like what AMD was kind of thinking, where hardware and certain types of hardware, and well, I should say specialized hardware, is going to take the load off of a lot of these advancements that we see. So I'm guessing this is kind of in the same vein. What is an mClassic dongle?
Well, this is trying to do some post-video processing for you on the dongle, and it certainly is. Capability is there. It certainly is within the realm of possibility to do a lot of stuff off a USB or off even an HDMI dongle like this. So the question with this is, how much better can it make your graphics processing? And if you think back to the days of audio cards, the USB audio card started coming out. Basically, you plug it in, you don't have to pop open your computer or whatever, and you can have a brand new sound card just by plugging in a USB. So this is sort of the same, within the same vein as doing that. So it's interesting, but I wonder how well it will do at this stage.
So let's just talk about what the company says, and here's how it reads. I was just reading it to myself. Seems very fantastic, and by fantastic I mean in the sense of wizards and whatnot. Maybe they can do it.
Right.
I don't know. But all right, so here's the quote. mClassic's powerful video processor analyzes each pixel in its immediate and global context to determine the most suitable processing per pixel with Marseille's probably proprietary technology called contextual processing. mClassic's patent technology redraws every single pixel on the fly at 120 frames per second with near zero latency and eliminates jagged edges that are smoothed over by an advanced anti-aliasing algorithm. End quote.
Now, so, okay. Anti-aliasing is basically when you have an edge between two different objects in CG, that edge needs to be smoothed through anti-aliasing. Because pixels are square, whenever you have a diagonal or a curve on an edge, you can have little stair steps. Exactly. So that's aliasing. Anti-aliasing blurs some of the pixels on that corner or the curve to give you a simulation of smoothness so that it doesn't look jagged. So that's what aliasing and anti-aliasing are. What this dongle purports to do is, let's say your gaming console is not very good and you can't set up your anti-aliasing levels quite as high as you would like. Like, for example, on a PC game, you can set up AA to be off to give you more frame rate, or you can set it to be 4 times or 8 times to give you smoother edges and a better look, but at the cost of speed loss, frame rate. So you can see on the left of what you just put up in the video, looks very jagged, but on the right it looks a lot better, but it comes at the cost of your frame rate. So what this dongle purports to do is to post-process that, meaning your video card or your console card will go as fast as it can, and then this dongle will add the anti-aliasing after the fact. Now, here's the rub. When you're anti-aliasing in CG, you're rasterizing. You're basically turning the CG elements and those edges from vector math, which is just lines that are infinitely smooth, into pixels, calling rasterization.
Right.
So that's really where you need anti-aliasing to be. What this will do is essentially identify edges and blur them. So the image quality will degrade, but it'll look less jagged, but it won't look anywhere near as good as it could if it was being anti-aliased straight out of the 3D scene.
And I guess the question is, they mentioned near zero latency. Like, I bet the way to make it look the absolute best is to take every frame of a game, have it exported to a professional studio, and have them retouch every single frame and send it back to your computer, and blah blah blah, which is obviously going to add weeks of latency to your screen. Awful. Right. But to do this with near zero latency, how effective do you think that's going to be? Because when we even talk about, let's say, 20, 30, 40 milliseconds, people notice that. That's that's some added time to let's say you're playing Rainbow Six Siege. That's a fraction of a second. That's important.
Absolutely. You're coming around the corner and you need to shoot your bad guy.
Yeah.
And I've been in that situation. I've been playing multiplayer where one of us has a 1 millisecond refresh on their screen and a high refresh rate and all that, where I'm on a 5 or 6 millisecond, it could, in some cases, make the difference between losing or winning that match. So near zero latency is all well and good, but it is going to add a little bit of a slowdown. But there's not a whole lot of super competitive gamers out there. I mean, aside from the actually wanting to win a game, but I mean like super. I wish almost professional competitive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just kind of wish that they actually put a number to it and just said really, really low, or near zero. I wish that they actually put a number to it, and didn't kind of leave us in the dark. But fantastic claims, heading to Kickstarter. So yep, that's if this thing works, like if nothing else, this is going to save some wear and tear on your graphics card. Put this in the middle. Hopefully you never see it, and you get free anti-aliasing without taxing your graphics card. So
yeah, I think so. It's a pretty bold claim, and I hope they can pull it off. But I think you're right. There is going to be a little bit of latency, and I don't like to see near zero.
Absolutely. Now, let's see. I think okay, here we go. So for those of you who don't know, the moon landing, we're having the 50th anniversary. If you've been visiting any kind of tech sites or things like that, they have been just hammering you with the fact that, hey, America went to the moon 50 years ago. It's great, perfect, wonderful. NVIDIA, and I wanted your reaction to this, just kind of like with cats. Hopefully you kind of take this a little bit better, but and they're showing on the video portion the original moon landing footage as you know it, and then let's see, NVIDIA went back and touched it up, and I'm trying to find, let's see, here it is with RTX on. They went back and I guess kind of edited the footage because it's very grainy, obviously 1968 or I think 1968, 1969, very, very grainy footage, and now you're looking at something that could potentially, it looks touched up, obviously, but at the same time, it looks
it's
better.
CG.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a very wise person who has an Oscar on his shelf once told me, you can't make something out of nothing. If your footage isn't already there, unless you're replacing that footage, you can't get it to look much better than what you have. So whenever you're removing grain, like that's beautiful, right? But that footage that you're playing right now, unless you're recreating, which is what's happening right here with RTX on, that footage isn't going to get much better, aside from maybe a little bit of noise reduction, which degrades the footage to begin with. It's just not possible. These are touched up photos, absolutely, but again, you're not flipping a switch and turning camera footage from 50 years ago into amazing CG.
Right. Yeah. No. And you can definitely see that, but I guess it was NVIDIA's way to kind of pay homage to kind of the moon landing, and it really should.
I think it's pretty cool, actually. I think it's super cool. I think doing it in VR, I think is a really great way to get people to think about how amazing it is to put people on the moon.
I know, we should do it again. We should do it again
Absolutely.
real soon. And with that being said, I think we're just about out of time. And by the way, actually speaking of which, this scene that we're kind of watching a video of, I'm like 99% sure that if you have a virtual reality headset, this whole scene, like they actually recreated the whole moon landing site in as much detail as they could, and you can actually explore that in 3D.
That's pretty cool.
Or in
that's
VR,
super cool.
I should say. Yeah, very, very cool. And of course, speaking once again of doing things real soon, Dariush, I want to say thank you so much for letting us reschedule you. I'm glad that we got you on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Always fun. And we look forward to talking to you next month. Thank you so much. Oh, we didn't even talk about Xbox and PS5. Next time. I don't think it'll be out by next.
We always end up wanting more.
Yep.
It's all good.
Yep, we'll talk about that next time. So everyone, Derakhshani, again, you can find him on Twitter. We follow him, and of course, we'll throw that up in the show notes. Everyone, we want to say thank you so much for joining us here on the program. And until next time, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, Hey, we'll be right back. And we have a lot of great guests, a lot of great shows. Dariush, have a good one. Everyone else out there, have a great weekend. Bye-bye.